Alert all
prison
units,
alarm
we have an
screamed through
escape
the
in
cold
progress.
night.
Seal
Red
the
lights
perimeter
flashed
now.
across every wall. Guards ran in every direction, shouting into their radios.
How is this
Every
possible?
steel
The doors
door
are
was
locked. I
Every
checked the bars
security
myself.
camera was
Nothing is
working.
touched.
Every
But the
guard was at their
registry says they
post.
were here an hour
Yet
ago.
3 prisoners had vanished. Not escaped through the front gate. Not hiding inside a cell. Not found on the prison roof. They were simply gone. Warden Daniel Brooks stood frozen outside cell block C. His hands shook as he stared at the empty prison cells. "This can't be possible," he whispered. The cells were still locked from the outside. The bars had not been cut. The concrete walls were untouched. There was no tunnel beneath the floor. No broken window. No damaged ceiling. Nothing. It was as if the 3 men had disappeared into thin air.
Keep it
A
moving,
young
eyes
officer
forward.
named Ryan Carter
Single
looked
file
pale
to
as he checked the
processing. Let's
security
go,
monitor
move.
again. "Sir, I watched the camera 3 times. 1 second they were inside their cells. The next second, they were gone." The room fell silent. Nobody spoke. Nobody even breathed.
I have to say, the
Then another
accommodations are
guard
much
slowly
better than I
raised a
expected.
shaking hand.
Very cozy.
"Sir,
Just sign the
what
form,
is it?"
Mr. Reed.
"I think
Everything
someone
is
is
standard
still
procedure.
inside cell block C." Every head turned toward the dark hallway. A slow metal clanging sound echoed from somewhere deep inside the prison. Clang, clang, clang. The lights flickered once. Then everything went dark. That was the moment everyone realized this nightmare had started many weeks earlier. It all began on a bright Monday morning when 3 new prisoners arrived at Blackstone State Prison. Blackstone was one of the toughest prisons in America. People called it the Fortress. Nobody had ever escaped. Not once. The prison sat alone on a rocky hill, surrounded by high fences covered with razor wire. Watchtowers stood on every corner. Armed officers watched every inch of the grounds. The prison held some of the country's most dangerous criminals. When inmates arrived, they knew one thing. They were not getting out. Officer Ryan Carter had worked there for only 8 months. He was young, honest, and believed every prisoner deserved to be treated fairly. Some older guards laughed at him. "This place changes people," Officer Mike Sullivan told him one afternoon. "You'll stop trusting everyone." Ryan smiled. "I'll be careful." Mike only nodded. "You'll learn." That same afternoon, a prison bus rolled through the front gate. 3 prisoners stepped off in handcuffs. The first was Ethan Walker. He was 38 years old. He barely spoke. His face showed almost no emotion. Instead of looking around nervously, he quietly studied everything. The cameras, the guards, the fences, every tiny detail. The second prisoner was Marcus Reed. Unlike Ethan, Marcus smiled all the time. He joked with officers. He laughed during searches. He acted like prison was just another place to visit. The third prisoner was Noah Parker. He was younger than the other 2. He looked scared. His hands shook as officers searched him. Ryan noticed Noah looking back toward the prison gate. It was the look of someone wishing he could wake up from a bad dream. After processing, the 3 men were taken to cell block C. Their cells stood next to one another. Cell 21. Cell 22. Cell 23. Everything looked normal. Nothing seemed unusual. Days turned into weeks. The prison followed the same schedule every day. Wake up. Breakfast. Work assignments. Lunch. Exercise. Dinner. Lockdown. Repeat. Ryan began noticing strange things. Ethan often borrowed books from the prison library. But he never read the stories. Instead, he carefully studied maps, history books, and old building records. Marcus became friendly with almost everyone. He knew officers' names. He knew cleaning schedules. He remembered delivery times. He always seemed to ask innocent questions. What time does the power inspection happen? When do maintenance workers visit? How old is this prison? Ryan thought Marcus was simply curious. Now he would later wish he had paid closer attention. Noah stayed quiet. He spent hours staring out the tiny window in his cell. Sometimes Ryan heard him talking to himself. Other times he looked terrified whenever the prison lights flickered. One rainy evening, Ryan walked past cell 23. Noah quickly stood. "Officer." Ryan stopped. "Yes. I need to tell someone something." Ryan walked closer. "What is it?" Noah lowered his voice. "I think someone is watching us." Ryan looked around the empty hallway. "The cameras?" "No." Noah swallowed hard. "Someone else." Ryan frowned. "What do you mean?" "I hear footsteps every night after lights out." Ryan smiled kindly. "The guards make rounds." "No." Noah shook his head. "These footsteps come from inside the walls." Ryan stared at him for a moment. Old prisons often made strange noises. Pipes expanded. Metal shifted. Wind echoed through empty spaces. It's probably the building settling, Ryan said. Noah slowly backed away. I hope you're right. That night Ryan couldn't stop thinking about the conversation. The next evening he listened carefully during his patrol. At first everything sounded normal. Then, tap, tap, tap. Very faint. Very slow. Coming from somewhere beyond the concrete wall. Ryan froze. He pressed his ear against the cold surface. The tapping stopped. Silence filled the hallway. Ryan stepped back. Maybe Noah had been right. Or maybe it was only old pipes. He told himself not to worry. But 2 nights later, during another patrol, Ryan noticed something that made his heart pound. A tiny pile of fresh gray dust sat on the floor outside Ethan Walker's cell. Concrete dust. It had not been there an hour earlier. Ryan slowly looked up. Then his eyes widened. There was a thin crack running across the back wall of cell 21. And from somewhere deep behind that wall, someone knocked 3 times. Ryan's heart nearly stopped. Knock. 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 The sound came from behind the wall. Not inside Ethan Walker's cell. Not from the hallway. It was deeper than that, as if someone was trapped inside the prison itself. Ryan grabbed his flashlight and pointed it at the crack in the concrete. Ethan, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Step away from the wall. Ethan slowly stood up from his bunk. His face stayed calm. I've been sitting here the whole time, officer. Did you hear that knocking? Ethan looked at the wall for a moment. I hear strange sounds every night. Why didn't you report them? I didn't think anyone would believe me. Ryan unlocked the food slot in the cell door and shined the flashlight through it. The crack was small, no wider than a coin. A little gray dust rested on the floor beneath it. He called for Officer Mike Sullivan. Within minutes, Mike arrived with 2 other guards. What do we have? Mike asked. Ryan pointed at the wall. I heard knocking from inside. Mike leaned close and listened. Nothing. He tapped the wall with his flashlight. The sound echoed through the concrete. Hollow, Mike whispered. One of the guards frowned. That doesn't make sense. These walls are solid. Mike looked at Ryan. Call maintenance first thing in the morning. The rest of the night passed without another sound. But Ryan couldn't stop thinking about it. The next morning, 2 maintenance workers arrived with tools and building plans. One of them, an older man named George Miller, studied the blueprints carefully. He scratched his head. That's strange. Ryan stepped closer. What is it? George pointed at the drawing. According to these plans, there shouldn't be empty space behind this wall. But George looked uneasy. The measurements don't match. He pulled out a tape measure and checked the hallway. Then he measured the inside of Ethan's cell. His face slowly turned pale. We're missing almost 4 feet. Ryan blinked. What do you mean? George pointed toward the wall. The building is 4 feet wider than it should be. Everyone stared at the blueprint. It was true. Somewhere behind the row of cells was a hidden space that did not appear on any official plan. Mike folded his arms. Open it. George hesitated. We need permission from the warden. An hour later, Warden Daniel Brooks arrived. He listened quietly while George explained everything. The warden had worked at Blackstone Prison for nearly 20 years. He knew every hallway, every office, every storage room. At least he thought he did. You've checked these numbers twice? He asked. George nodded. 3 times. The warden looked toward the cracked wall. Break it open. The maintenance workers brought in a heavy drill. The loud machine echoed through cell block C. Dust filled the air. Small pieces of concrete fell to the floor. Everyone watched. After several minutes, crash. A large section of the wall broke apart. Ryan aimed his flashlight into the opening. His mouth fell open. There was an empty passage behind the wall. It stretched into darkness. The air coming from inside felt cold. Very cold. No one spoke. Mike finally broke the silence. How can this be here? George slowly shook his head. It shouldn't exist. The passage was barely wide enough for one person to walk through. Its walls were made of old bricks instead of modern concrete. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling. The floor was covered with thick dust. It looked like no one had entered it for years. Or so they thought. Ryan crouched near the entrance. He noticed something unusual. Footprints. Fresh footprints. Someone had walked through the dust recently. Sir, Ryan whispered. The warden looked down. Everyone saw them. 3 sets of footprints. All heading deeper into the hidden passage. None coming back. Mike checked his flashlight. I'm going in. The warden nodded. Ryan, you're with him. The 2 officers carefully stepped inside. The air smelled old and damp. Every sound echoed around them. Water dripped somewhere far ahead. The passage twisted beneath the prison. Old pipes ran across the ceiling. Some were rusty. Others looked newer. Ryan shined his flashlight across the brick walls. He noticed strange markings scratched into the surface. Numbers, arrows, small circles, almost like someone had been making a map. Who would know this place existed? Ryan asked. Mike didn't answer. They kept walking. After nearly 5 minutes, they reached an old steel door. The door hung slightly open. Its rusty lock had been broken long ago. Ryan slowly pushed it wider. The room beyond was small. Inside sat an old wooden table, a broken chair, several empty water bottles, blankets, canned food, flashlights, fresh batteries. Someone had been using this room recently. Mike looked around carefully. This isn't abandoned. Ryan picked up one of the water bottles. The label was clean. No dust. It was open this week. Mike's radio suddenly crackled. Report. It was the warden. Mike answered. We found a room. Someone's been living down here. There was silence on the radio. Then the warden spoke again. Return immediately. Why? The prison accountant just found something. Mike frowned. What? The maintenance budget. Ryan could hear the warden breathing heavily. Someone has been ordering construction supplies for years. Ryan looked around the hidden room again. Concrete mix. Steel tools. What? Lights. Someone had been secretly building something beneath the prison. But who? The two officers hurried back upstairs. When they reached the administration office, the warden spread several files across his desk. Look at these. Ryan flipped through the papers. Every few months, small amounts of building materials had been delivered. Not enough to attract attention. Just enough to disappear into normal prison repairs. The orders stretched back almost 15 years. Who approved these? Ryan asked. The warden's face turned grim. That's the problem. He pointed to the signature line. Every order had been signed by a different employee. Some had retired. Some had transferred. 2 had died years ago. None of them should have been connected. Ryan slowly looked up. So someone was hiding the truth. The warden nodded. For a very long time. Before anyone could speak again, the emergency phone rang. Mike answered it. His face lost all color. What happened? The warden demanded. Mike lowered the phone. His voice was barely a whisper. Sir. What is it? The control room just reviewed yesterday's security video. And? Mike swallowed hard. The cameras never lost power. Ryan frowned. That's impossible. Mike looked directly at him. The video shows Ethan, Marcus, and Noah standing inside their locked cells. He paused. Then all 3 prisoners turned toward the back wall at exactly the same second. The room fell silent. They smiled. Mike's hands began to shake. And then they walked straight through the concrete wall. Nobody in the room spoke. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall. Ryan stared at Mike. That's not possible. Mike nodded slowly. I know. The warden stood up so fast that his chair tipped over. Take me to the control room. Within seconds, everyone hurried down the hallway. The control room was packed with officers. Some looked confused. Others looked frightened. The head of security, Officer James Cooper, had the video paused on a large screen. He looked exhausted. I've watched it 12 times, James said quietly. I still can't explain it. The warden folded his arms. Play it. The video began. It showed cell block C during the night. Everything looked normal. Ethan sat on his bunk reading a book. Marcus was walking small circles around his cell. Noah stared out the tiny window. Nothing unusual happened for several minutes. Then, at exactly 2:17 a.m., all 3 men stopped moving. At the same instant. Almost like they had heard the same sound. Slowly, each prisoner turned toward the back wall of his cell. Ryan felt chills run down his arms. None of them spoke. None of them looked afraid. Instead, all 3 smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret. Then something strange happened. The picture became fuzzy. Only for 1 second. When the image became clear again, the cells were empty. The prisoners were gone. No broken wall. No open door. Nothing. The room remained silent. Finally, the warden spoke. Freeze the picture. James did. Ryan walked closer to the screen. He noticed something tiny. Zoom in. James pressed a few buttons. The picture became larger. Ryan pointed toward Ethan's cell. Right there. At the bottom of the wall was a small dark shape. "What is that?" Mike asked. James zoomed in again. It looked like a narrow opening near the floor. Only a few inches wide. Too small for a person. The warden frowned. "Can you make it any clearer?" James tried. The image became blurry, then clear again. The dark shape was gone. Ryan rubbed his eyes. "Did anyone else see that?" Everyone nodded. The opening had appeared, then disappeared. The warden looked at James. "Has this happened before?" James checked old recordings. Hour after hour of video played across the screen. Nothing unusual. Then he stopped. Wait. He rewound the video from 3 weeks earlier. Again at exactly 2:17 a.m., the picture became fuzzy for 1 second. Nobody had noticed before. Because nothing seemed to happen. Or so they thought. James zoomed in. A shadow moved behind the wall. Not inside the cell. Behind it, someone, or something, had been walking through the hidden passage. Ryan looked at the calendar. 3 weeks ago. Mike nodded. That was the night Noah first reported hearing footsteps. The room became quiet again. The warden made a decision. "We're searching every inch beneath this prison." Within an hour, more than 20 officers entered the hidden passage. Every person carried a flashlight. Every hallway was checked. Every room was searched. The underground space was much larger than anyone had imagined. There were old brick tunnels stretching in different directions. Some ended at collapsed walls. Others led to locked steel doors. Ryan marked each path on a map. Hours passed. They found old tools, broken pipes, empty storage rooms. But no prisoners. Late that afternoon, Ryan noticed fresh footprints again. The dust had been disturbed. Over here. Everyone hurried toward him. The footprints led down a narrow tunnel. They walked slowly. The air became colder. The tunnel finally opened into a large underground chamber. Ryan swept his flashlight across the room. His eyes grew wide. The chamber was filled with shelves. Hundreds of old files sat neatly stacked from floor to ceiling. Boxes covered in dust lined the walls. Mike opened one. Inside were prison records dating back more than 50 years. "What is all this?" Ryan asked. The warden picked up a folder. His face changed immediately. "This file shouldn't exist." Ryan looked over his shoulder. The folder belonged to an inmate named Benjamin Cross. His sentence had ended 30 years ago. According to the official records, Benjamin had been released. But inside this hidden file was a different story. Benjamin had disappeared. No release. No transfer. No death certificate. Just one handwritten note. Subject missing. Search unsuccessful. Asterisk asterisk. Ryan frowned. There are more. File after file told the same story. Different names. Different years. The same ending. Missing. 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 Dozens of prisoners had vanished over the years. Yet no one outside the prison had ever known. Someone had hidden every record. Ryan's stomach tightened. This wasn't the first disappearance. The warden slowly nodded. And maybe not the last. Just then, Officer James called from the other side of the chamber. "You need to see this." Everyone rushed over. James had found another steel door. Unlike the others, this one looked new. Fresh paint covered the surface. A modern electronic lock had been installed. Someone had used it recently. Ryan touched the handle. It was warm. "Someone's in there," he whispered. The warden motioned for everyone to stay quiet. Mike carefully entered the access code used for prison maintenance. Nothing happened. The door stayed locked. One officer brought over a heavy steel ram. "Ready?" The team nodded. They slammed the door once. It shook but held. Again. The hinges groaned. A third hit. Crashed. The door burst open. The officers rushed inside with flashlights raised. The room was empty. But it was far from abandoned. There were computer monitors. Power cables. Fresh food. Bottled water. Maps of the prison. Security schedules. Guard shift changes. Every detail about Blackstone Prison had been carefully collected. Ryan spotted something hanging on the wall. A large calendar. Every date had been crossed off. Except one. Tomorrow's date was circled in thick red marker. Under it, someone had written only 4 words. "The others leave next." At that exact moment, every light in the underground chamber went out. Complete darkness filled the tunnels. Then somewhere deep below them, a voice quietly whispered, "They know you're here." Some had transferred. 2 had died years ago. None of them should have been connected. Ryan slowly looked up. So someone was hiding the truth. The warden nodded. For a very long time. Before anyone could speak again, the emergency phone rang. Mike answered it. His face lost all color. "What happened?" the warden demanded. Mike lowered the phone. His voice was barely a whisper. "Sir." "What is it?" "The control room just reviewed yesterday's security video." "And?" Mike swallowed hard. "The cameras never lost power." Ryan frowned. "That's impossible." Mike looked directly at him. "The video shows Ethan, Marcus, and Noah standing inside their locked cells." He paused. Then all three prisoners turned toward the back wall at exactly the same second. The room fell silent. They smiled. Mike's hands began to shake. And then they walked straight through the concrete wall. The whisper echoed through the darkness. "They know you're here." Ryan gripped his flashlight so tightly his hand hurt. "Who said that?" he shouted. No one answered. The underground tunnels were completely silent. Then footsteps began. Slow. Careful. Coming from somewhere ahead. Officer Mike Sullivan raised his flashlight, but it would not turn on. One by one the other flashlights failed too. Only Ryan's light flickered weakly. The beam danced across the brick walls. It stopped on a figure standing at the end of the tunnel. A man. He wore an old gray prison uniform. His face was hidden in the shadows. Ryan called out, "Don't move." The man did not run. He simply stared at them. Then he turned and disappeared around the corner. "Go," the warden ordered. The officers rushed after him. They rounded the corner. The tunnel was empty. There was nowhere to hide. No doors. No side passages. Just a long hallway ending at a solid brick wall. Ryan shined his weak flashlight across the floor. Fresh footprints ended in front of the wall. There were no footprints leading away. "It doesn't make any sense," Mike whispered. The warden touched the bricks. "They're solid." Ryan examined the floor. Near the wall he noticed tiny scratch marks. Almost too small to see. He knelt down. One brick looked newer than the others. "Help me." Mike pushed against it. Nothing happened. The warden tried. Still nothing. Finally all three pushed together. With a loud grinding sound, part of the wall slowly slid sideways. Cold air rushed out. Behind the wall was another hidden tunnel. The officers exchanged nervous looks. "How many secret passages are under this prison?" Ryan asked. No one had an answer. They carefully entered. This tunnel looked different. The bricks were newer. Electric lights hung from the ceiling. Someone had installed them only a few years earlier. The tunnel finally opened into a large underground workshop. Tables were covered with tools. There were radios, batteries, ropes, work gloves, and stacks of building supplies. Ryan walked toward a bulletin board. Dozens of photographs were pinned to it. His heart skipped a beat. The pictures showed prison guards. Every guard. Every supervisor. Even the warden. Each photo had handwritten notes beside it. Starts shift at 6 o'clock. Takes lunch at noon. Always checks the east hallway first. "They've been watching us," Mike said quietly. "For years." Ryan looked at another section of the board. 3 new photographs had been added. Ethan Walker. Marcus Reed. Noah Parker. Under each picture was a single word. "Ready." The warden picked up a notebook lying on the table. Inside were careful notes written over many years. Measurements. Schedules. Maps. Supply lists. Everything pointed to one thing. Someone had built a hidden network beneath Blackstone Prison over a very long time. Ryan turned another page. He stopped breathing. There was a list of names. Not guards. Not wardens. Prisoners. Some names had check marks beside them. Others had been crossed out. At the very bottom were Ethan, Marcus, and Noah. All 3 had fresh check marks. "What does this list mean?" Ryan asked. Before anyone could answer, a loud buzzing sound filled the room. One of the computer monitors suddenly turned on by itself. The screen showed a live security camera from cell block C. Everyone crowded around. The prison block looked normal. Officers were standing guard. Nothing seemed wrong. Then a man stepped into view. Ryan's eyes widened. It can't be. It was Ethan Walker. He was walking calmly down the hallway. No handcuffs. No guards beside him. He looked straight into the camera. Then he smiled. Marcus and Noah stepped into view beside him. All 3 men stood shoulder to shoulder. Ethan leaned toward the camera. His voice came through the speakers. "If you're watching this." He paused. "You're already too late." The screen went black. At that exact second, alarms exploded throughout the prison. Emergency sirens echoed above them. The warden grabbed his radio. "Control room. Report." Only static answered. Mike tried another channel. Nothing. Every radio had gone silent. Ryan looked toward the tunnel leading back upstairs. We have to get back. The officers ran as fast as they could. The hidden passages seemed longer than before. Every turn looked the same. Ryan checked the map he had been drawing. His stomach dropped. The map no longer matched the tunnels. A hallway that should have ended suddenly continued. Another passage had disappeared behind a newly built wall. It's like a maze, one officer said. No, the warden replied grimly. It's been changed. After several tense minutes, they finally reached the opening behind cell 21. They climbed back into cell block C. The prison was in complete chaos. Officers ran in every direction. Cell doors were slamming shut automatically. Emergency lights flashed red across the walls. Captain Laura Mitchell rushed toward the warden. Sir. What happened? We've confirmed 3 inmates are missing. The warden looked confused. Only 3. Laura shook her head. No. She swallowed hard. Not Ethan, Marcus, and Noah. Ryan felt a chill run through his body. Then who? Laura handed over a report. The names were unfamiliar. 3 inmates from another housing unit. Maximum security prisoners. Dangerous men. They had vanished from locked cells. Exactly the same way. The warden stared at the report in disbelief. It happened again. Ryan suddenly remembered the note on the calendar. The others leave next. It hadn't been a warning. It had been a schedule. Before anyone could speak, the prison's public address system crackled to life. A calm voice echoed through every hallway. Good evening, officers. Ryan recognized it immediately. It was Ethan Walker. You've been searching for us in the wrong place. The voice paused. Then Ethan laughed softly. You still think this prison was built to keep people in? Another pause. But that's not why it was built. The speakers went silent. At that very moment, the entire prison shook with a deep rumble. Concrete cracked beneath their feet. A section of the floor in the middle of cell block C collapsed inward. From the darkness below, dozens of hidden tunnels were suddenly exposed. The floor collapsed with a thunderous crash. Dust filled the air. Officers stumbled backward as pieces of concrete fell into the darkness below. Everyone stared in disbelief. The prison had been hiding far more tunnels than anyone had ever imagined. The opening stretched across the entire center of cell block C. Ryan pointed his flashlight into the hole. There were dozens of passageways branching in every direction. Some looked old. Others had fresh concrete and new lights. Someone had been building this underground maze for years. The warden looked at his officers. Seal every exit. Nobody goes in or out of this prison. Guards rushed to lock every gate. State police arrived within minutes. Soon the prison was surrounded. No vehicle could leave. No helicopter could land. No one was getting away. Ryan, Mike, and a special search team entered the largest tunnel. This time they moved slowly. Every corner could hide a surprise. After several minutes, they heard voices ahead. Ryan raised his hand. Everyone stopped. The voices grew louder. When they turned the next corner, they found Ethan, Marcus, and Noah waiting calmly inside a large underground room. None of them tried to run. Ethan smiled. I knew you'd find us. The officers aimed their weapons. Hands where we can see them. Mike shouted. The 3 prisoners obeyed. Ryan looked around the room. There were maps, tools, food supplies, and old prison records everywhere. On one wall hung photographs of missing prisoners dating back decades. Ryan finally understood. This place wasn't built overnight. Ethan nodded. No. It took years. The warden stepped forward. Who helped you? Ethan looked directly at him. No one helped us escape. He pointed toward the old files. We found what others left behind. Ryan frowned. What do you mean? Marcus answered. Years ago, inmates working maintenance discovered abandoned service tunnels that were never shown on the official blueprints. Noah continued. Every few years another prisoner found a small piece of the maze. Some escaped. Others disappeared trying. Ethan took a deep breath. We spent months connecting the clues hidden in those old records. We secretly repaired blocked passages and built safe rooms without anyone noticing. Ryan remembered the small construction orders. The hidden supplies. The maps. Everything finally made sense. The missing prisoners from long ago had uncovered parts of the maze, but their stories had been buried inside secret files instead of being fully investigated. The warden lowered his head. We failed to discover what was beneath our own prison. Ethan gave a small nod. You were guarding the walls above. You never looked below. At that moment, officers searching another tunnel called over the radio. We found the 3 missing inmates from North Block. Ryan hurried to the location. The inmates were frightened but unharmed. They had become lost while trying to follow Ethan's hidden routes after hearing rumors about the underground passages. Medical staff checked them before taking them back upstairs. No one else was missing. The danger was finally over. Engineers arrived over the next several days. They carefully explored every tunnel beneath Blackstone State Prison. The underground maze stretched for miles. Many passages were sealed forever. Others were documented for the first time. The prison was rebuilt with stronger foundations, new surveillance systems, and detailed maps so nothing like this could happen again. A full investigation revealed years of overlooked maintenance records and forgotten construction work that had allowed the hidden network to grow unnoticed. New safety procedures were introduced across the prison system. Ryan was praised for noticing the strange concrete dust and refusing to ignore the small clues. Mike smiled as he shook Ryan's hand. "You never stopped asking questions." Ryan smiled back. "Sometimes the smallest clue leads to the biggest truth." Several months later, Blackstone State Prison looked peaceful again. The alarms were silent. The tunnels were sealed. The mystery had finally been solved. As Ryan walked past the rebuilt cell block C, he paused for one last look. The walls stood strong. The floors were solid. There were no more hidden doors. No more secret passages. Only a lesson that everyone would remember. Even the safest place can hold dangerous secrets if people stop paying attention. And the story of the 3 prisoners who vanished without a trace became one of the most unforgettable prison mysteries ever told, ending not with magic but with patience, hidden history, and the determination to uncover the truth.